Welcome to The Explainer. We're diving into a story out of Bangladesh that's, well, it's truly shocking. A horrific mob lynching has sent shockwaves through the country. And today, we're going to unpack what happened, why it happened, and what it might mean for the deep-seated tensions that are really threatening the nation's stability right now.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the brutal lynching itself. Then, we'll get into the accusation that really lit the fuse here. After that, we'll see how the government responded. And then we're going to zoom out. We need to understand the bigger picture, this backdrop of national unrest. And finally, we'll connect all the dots and see how this is becoming a major political firestorm.
Just take a moment to read this. This is from the victim's own father, Ravil Das. It's a gut-wrenching place to start, but it's so important for us to remember the very real human cost of what we're about to break down.
All right, let's start with what actually happened. We're talking about the night of December 19th in the Mymensingh district.
So the man at the center of this was Dipu Chandra Das. He was just 27 years old, worked at a garment factory, and it's really important to note that he was a member of Bangladesh's Hindu minority. That becomes a key part of this whole story. He was living as a tenant in the Baluka Upazila area, and that's exactly where this all went down.
So you have to be asking yourself, what could possibly lead to this level of brutality? I mean, what could trigger an entire mob? Well, it all started with an accusation, just a few hours earlier.
The accusation was blasphemy. He was accused of making derogatory comments about Islam and the Prophet Muhammad. Now, you have to understand, this is an incredibly sensitive, just an absolutely explosive charge in that region, and it was made right there at his workplace during an event for World Arabic Language Day. And from that one spark, the rumor it spread like wildfire. It didn't just ignite fury in the factory, it raced through the entire area.
And the way the violence escalated, it's just a horrifying sequence. It starts with him being beaten at the factory, but it doesn't end there. The mob then takes his body to a public bus stand, they tie him to a tree, and they set him on fire. And if you can believe it, they still weren't done. They moved his body again, this time right onto a major highway, and burned it a second time. I mean, this brought traffic to a complete standstill and just caused widespread panic.
So after a public horror like that, all eyes were on the interim government, which is led by Chief Advisor Muhammad Yunus, and they were under immense pressure to do something and do it fast. You got to remember, this government is only in place to oversee the upcoming elections after that huge pro-democracy uprising. So for them, maintaining stability, that's priority number one.
And to their credit, the response was pretty swift. In fact, Chief Advisor Yunus himself got on social media and announced that their special force, the Rapid Action Battalion, or RAB, had already arrested 7 suspects in connection with the lynching.
But here's the thing. This horrific event didn't just happen in a vacuum. To really get why this happened, and maybe more importantly, why it happened now, we need to zoom out. We have to look at this wave of political instability that was already rocking Bangladesh. And right at the heart of all this unrest was a man named Sharif Osman Hadi. He was this really charismatic student leader, and he basically became the face of the recent pro-democracy uprising. You know, he was seen as this powerful voice for a new generation, a generation that was just completely fed up with the entire political establishment.
Okay, so look at this timeline. It really shows just how fast things completely spiraled out of control. So let's just walk through it. December 12th, Hadi is shot. He clings to life for almost a week. But then on December 18th, he dies. His death immediately, and I mean immediately, triggers nationwide protests. And then, the very next day, in what is basically a national powder keg, Dipu Chandra Das is lynched.
So, as you can imagine, in this incredibly charged environment, the violence immediately became a political football, right? You've got a national election just around the corner, and both sides started trying to spin this horrible tragedy to their own advantage.
And almost instantly, 2 competing narratives started to form. On one side, you have the interim government. They're working overtime to project this image of control, right? They're pointing to the swift arrests and saying, see, we're taking decisive action. But on the other side, the opposition Awami League is painting a completely different picture. You've got figures like former Minister Muhammad Ali Arafat coming out and saying this is a terrifying sign of rising radicalism, and that the current government, well, they just can't handle it.
So that really leaves us with the critical question, doesn't it? For a nation that's already on a knife's edge, what does all this violence actually mean for the future of Bangladesh? Is this going to be the thing that pulls the country even further apart? Or could it just maybe be a wake-up call for real change?